Welcome back to Arkansas Bigfoot, everybody. I'm glad everyone tuned in with us today. Now we've got the little campfire burning because it's easier to get into the mindset for some of the things that we need to talk about, and we've got a lot of ground to cover and some pretty deep subjects to jump into. So you might want to get you a double shot of whatever nerve tonic that you prefer. Find a comfortable chair or pull up a lawn chair next to us and we'll get with it. And we've had a lot of questions about these shimmering apparitions or shimmering people or silhouettes that we find out in the woods sometimes. And I know it's been a lot more frequent with a lot of other people as well. And there were some things that we wanted to kind of delve into that'll give some kind of an explanation. Some of it'll give a foreboding warning, something to be aware of when you're out in the woods and hiking or camping or doing the things that you're doing. But I think one of the better places to start off is talking about the different layers of frequency and how they affect the portal energy. So imagine, if you will, you've got low band frequencies that have been around since they have invented radios, and it's perpetuated up through mid band and then high band frequencies. And most of the stuff that we use on a common daily basis is either low band or mid range. And now they're introducing the 5G, which has this extreme high bandwidth frequency that it resonates with, which is extremely fast in comparison to the low band frequency. So imagine, if you will, a dictionary laying on its side where you can see all of the pages stacked up, one above the other, above the other. And that's what all of these bands of frequency are like, that are around us constantly, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Sasquatch is able to manipulate his energy and open portals, walk through dimensions, and he's got that down to a fine-tuned science. But there are other things that are able to come in and out as well, and that's some of the stuff that we want to talk about. So if you got any thoughts on that you want to share while I take a breath and get ready for my next deluge of what I'm going to talk about.
I've been focusing on shimmers. There was just a little information that came through in that they were from another realm, another plane of sorts, but not another dimension per se. And in seeking out that truth, because a lot of them have been frightening, what we've experienced hasn't been as frightening to us. But I do believe that many of these experiences are frightening. And while I'm not big on cliches, the predator imagery that comes to most people's minds when they see these things, and they're jumping through the tops of trees, and some of them not, some of them are on the ground, some of them are in houses, some of them are in cities. But did you have any thought before I continue?
I've got a lot of thought that I'm going to lay down, but you go right ahead with what you're going to say, because mine's going to make you have to go get another double shot of whatever nerve tonic that you need to have.
Did I bring that much coffee?
I don't know, but...
So, the basic, the raw essential of it that I got was that most all of this has to do with 5G. Currently, in the last year or so, 2 years, that a lot of these experiences are becoming more common.
It's really ramped up
Yeah.
since the introduction of this.
And it isn't that there's ill intent behind it. Don't misunderstand. But these energies have learned how to use
It specified that there's not any ill intent on the people that are trying to put out the 5G network. That's not where the ill intent is coming.
I'm sorry. Yeah. But there may be some out there that are aware of what it can produce or enable, but I wouldn't get into any big conspiracy drama or anything like that. But these energies are coming from an astral plane. Now, in that particular astral plane, what I see is something that would be almost an abyss of sorts. Most energies that are there are what I feel are souls or the astral body waiting to come into this realm, and they're fine. They're perfectly fine. On the other side of that, it's almost like a corner of the room. What I feel are souls that are sorry, I'm looking for the word, like waiting for that possibility, but their energy isn't right. There's something imbalanced. In the meantime, they have somehow learned how to use frequency, how to use plays of energy to get into our real-time world. Part of the reason that they look so shocked when they see that you see them or we see them is because they're trying to be sneaky. They're trying to sneak out the back door, so to speak, and ride. It feels like it's riding a wave, literally. And there's something very usury in it. They're taking, whether it's nature or people or, hustle and bustle, electricity, whatever they can use. I see them gathering energy. And some of them, would try to gather even life force, whether that's nature or people or, depending if your exposure, maybe you're raw, maybe you're high-strung or emotional or not well-grounded.
Fear is a
biggie.
A big magnet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like lighting a candle in the darkness and every moth comes to it.
And so, Anku had said no substance. And I feel that in our case, he's being honest. I feel that for most people, there is no concern or no harm that can come to them, especially when their core is focused on all of the higher things. But for those that aren't focused on that, for those that run through the gambit of anger and fear and all of the palm of that negative, they have more to be concerned with. And, it can be used as an opportunity. But, go ahead.
Well, let's take this on to another layer here. Maybe some of you are familiar with the term remote viewing, and that is something even the government deeply examined and practiced and still are, in a lot of regards today in their covert black ops and, the three-letter alphabet soup groups and things like that. sometimes that is just the energy of someone that is in the process of doing their remote viewing. They would come across as a shimmering element. So there's one small fraction of an explanation to some.
Yeah, another version of an astral.
Exactly, it's another version of an astral energy or entity or
Essence.
And I'm going to use the word alien, and I'm not using it in the context of something from outer space, from another planet. I'm using it in the context of it's alien to our natural space that we're used to functioning in. It's a foreign object, an alien object to our space. So if you are in any way, shape, or form familiar with the multiverses or the mirror universes, all alter dimensions, interdimensions, it's all mirror images like running to a copier of the different worlds around it, but not everything is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
You may be exactly like yourself in the way that you look and appear in another dimension, but yet have an entirely different personality and demeanor, another different type of job or function or whatever. So these go on and on and on as far as the mirror stacked up against a mirror can look into the mirrors. So we're going down the rabbit hole with this here. Now there are some that have figured out how to manipulate those frequencies and those energies and come through these portals.
Mm-hmm.
And
it would be, the Germans had a term of doppelganger. And to some degree, it would be similar in that it's almost these are all, I'm going to go out on a limb based on what I'm getting, and these are all aspects of our experience. We can't physically cut ourselves into that many pieces, but we are huge. The essence of us is huge, and not all of what we are is love and light and positivity. Much of what we are may be. And there may be that one or two or three pieces of shadow that are lingering out there. And I feel like a lot of times we open up.
Put an image of yourself in a mirror and then shatter the mirror, and every small shard and piece of that shattered mirror is another element or essence of yourself. Have to pause for the truck to go home.
But for some, these, we have a variety of energies using this. And as they collect light, as they collect data, because light is information, it gives them a certain substance where they normally would be immaterial. But that substance is what we're catching sight of in the, in what's been collected. And they don't even realize that they've collected that much, which is why they're shocked. Not all of these energies are evil or malevolent. Some aren't. And not all of those that are aspects of ourselves. But the discernment, being able to ask the right questions. If you feel dread, if you feel immense fear, follow that instinct. But be willing to ask yourself the right questions if possible.
Alright, so let me paint you a picture. And the first thing I want to say before we start painting this picture is that two things of the exact like energy cannot exist in the same space. They will not exist in the same space. One will thrive, the other will die. So here's a picture of Happy Joe Camper. He's out in the woods and he's on the hiking trail and he's walking along, and it's a nice sunny afternoon, and he's under the shade of the trees and everything is cool and pleasant under there, and he steps up around the curve of the trail and vanishes into nowhere. Hiker Joe's just stepped into a portal that's been opened up by any one of these beings that we've been discussing. Well, if he steps into a altered dimension that has a duplicate of himself in it, one cannot survive. And they may throw him back out miles and miles down the road in our physical space, but it's just basically tossing him through the portal in their space.
And to that effect, it's almost an illusion.
Right.
Because you have the thought that you're in the same space. But understand that space is not what we believe it to be. So you can easily step into another space, another reality, another plane, dimension. I mean, there's so many things without being aware, because the surroundings were just right for it. We've met doors, we've met those portals, and most often we come out and we know we've been into it. And I think most of you that have followed along with us have sensed the very same thing. You've stepped into something and back out of it. And for all of us to be able to experience that together is amazing.
You'll see the entire energetic shift in the woods when we're walking around in it for a minute to several minutes, where it will shift into one feeling of energy and then shift right back out again to where it had been at the beginning.
Now, some portals, we've talked about the portals out in the woods, but some portals are huge. Absolutely huge. And some of these state parks are places where there's vast land. The Middle East, thousands of miles wide.
You start looking at things like, everyone is familiar with the Bermuda Triangle, the Alaskan Triangle. There's another triangle up in the northeast of the United States.
Sierra Nevadas.
In the Sierra Nevadas, these are all high activity areas.
For a reason.
The frequency of the place is just conducive to opening and closing portals like revolving doors, and it's just insane the amount of coming and going that happens in these places.
Yes.
One of the things that, if you watched a couple videos back, I was laying that little orgone block on the EMF meter out in the woods. Now, normally, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, in the woods like that, your typical base reading should be low. We're talking 10 points or less.
Yeah.
Ours averages 52 constant. When I set the orgone block on there, it dropped it down to 47, and that was just a tiny little 1 inch by 1.5 inch orgone block. But it blocked that much of that frequency to drop it down 5 points. But that's insane, the amount that is constant.
So we're thinking that entire woods.
A lot of that has to do with all of the quartz that's in the ground, the water that's constantly in the ground because it's a high conductor.
Minerals,
and it's just resonating on an insane frequency level out there. So that's why we get the huge amount of the shimmer, the
activity, period.
All the activity, period.
Little people, you name it.
We're at
we're like the only two people out there.
Basically standing in the middle of a interdimensional airport.
Unfortunately, they're all supportive. I mean, there's a few that we kind of have felt to keep an eye on, but they feel outnumbered and they don't feel like they're really malevolent. They're just...
Now, how does one guard to keep that door from opening underneath their feet where they slip through the cracks? That's still something everybody's got to investigate and start working on. There's got to be ways to kind of block that or mute that. I'm not exactly sure yet what that is, but it's definitely something we're going to be digging down deep into to find any kind of an answer for. And not all of the portals are a negative
No.
in that regard.
Mm-mm.
Let's say if 10 open up, 2 might hold that potential for being that very bad space. 8 might go into different rooms of the fun house, so to speak. But that's just it. You don't know what you've got until you're stepped inside, and then it's a little too late.
And awareness is key. You know, always being aware and noticing the subtle differences in your space. If you're walking along and the light changes, and we have that happen often, and there's not a particular environmental cause. You know, I'm not talking about a storm rolling in. I'm not talking about normal causes for these things. You're just going along your way and all of a sudden the light changes. You know, perk yourself up and be aware and realize it's a potential that your space has changed. Does that mean that you stepped into another reality? Not necessarily, but you might be on the fringe of a dimensional difference.
Might be standing in the edge of the shift.
Mm-hmm. And that might be where you experience your Sasquatch, your little people. You know, hopefully not the Shimmers, but if they show up, at least you'll know that, you know, there's a way out of it. And if you go back the way you came, probably a 99% chance that you're not going to see them. They'll stay a distance from you because there's only certain frequencies that they can operate in. So,
You know, a lot of the stories about the little people out in the woods, if they were playing music, like you could hear flute music or wind chime music on the breeze, and they said, don't follow the sound of that music because you may never be seen again.
there's a reason for
maybe
those
maybe that frequency that they're playing has the door to the portal wide open and you've stepped through.
Yep. People have disappeared. Some of them have reappeared after years, but they would have sworn they were only gone a day. You know, these things are possible. No, we're not taught about them in school, but we have to be accountable for ourselves.
Well, in some ways we are kind of taught about them, but we brush them off as
Well,
fairy tales and nonsense. You know, all of these things had to have a root truth somewhere in them. Kind of like the story of Rip Van Winkle.
Mm-hmm. Time.
That is literally a time warp portal in and of itself.
And a lot of people just didn't know how to explain what they'd experienced, or maybe somebody they knew had experienced it. So they'd write a fairy tale about it, or, you know, to try to put it out there.
Try to express it in whatever means they could understand at the time. So don't brush all of it off as just some, you know, imaginary fairy tale somebody made up in their parlor one night. A lot of these things came from a foundation of truth somewhere at some point.
And most of the time, if, let's say it is a shimmer, you know, most of the time, if it's something that feels predatory, if it's something that, you know, gives you that huge sense of dread, do get away from it. Don't try to chase it down. You know, there's no way to explain.
Well, internally, biologically, your heart and your gut are the two biggest brains and the two biggest electrical conduits in your system.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to put it all inside your head and the brain, but actually your heart and your gut do more of the subliminal thinking for your body and for your energetic space than your mind does. So that's one thing that you can try to tune for yourself, is to go with the feeling, that gut feeling. That phrase, that saying wasn't just made up out of thin air. Follow your gut instinct. Follow your heart instinct. If it feels like something's just off or not right, run with it or run away from it. One or the other. But
And understand, you have authority. You have authority over yourself. If you can grab onto that fear by the neck,
it's all right.
okay.
We're in the backyard. Cars and trucks come and go. It's
No,
not
it's
like
just-
it's...
I know that yelling is not my forte, but if you can grab that fear by the neck, get a hold of yourself, understand you have authority over your field. You have authority over you. You know, pray if you need to. Draw down all the good that you can. But the fear is what some of those things are counting on. And I believe that a lot of them can shapeshift and can become maybe other cryptids or other things with enough mass, with enough intelligence to, you know, to use their space to develop or get the highest fear response that they can. That doesn't mean that all cryptids are not cryptids. But what I'm saying is, feel it. Follow your gut. Follow your heart. And if it doesn't feel like what it looks like, it probably isn't.
Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whichever name you want to use for the people, they are rock stars at jumping through portals and moving through dimensions. And I am certain that the way that they act in ours is exactly the way they act in any other that they go to. They are very elusive. And they guard their spots and their doorways and try to keep that a secret unto themselves. And I don't feel like they, in and by themselves, are opening portals for all this negativity and stuff that comes through. But going back to the whole layer of frequencies and the abundance of it that's being dumped on us on a daily basis, it's allowing other things to open their own gates, their own portals, to move in and out and through. Some of them just want to watch and observe.
And maybe, we don't know what's possible. Maybe things can spy on Sasquatch or other energies, the little people, whatever, that might be using these doorways and seeing through a point of observation maybe some of what they're doing, or somehow using energy. I don't feel that Sasquatch or the little people or anything like that is instructing them on how to do that. Because everything I've gotten is that they push that energy back if it's trying to use a portal that they're aware of.
They do their best to guard their space.
Yes. And a lot of people talk about Dogman and that they are gatekeepers. I'm not so sure that they aren't. But what are they keeping? What are they guarding? Are they opening the door for some of these things? You know, like attracts like in the sense of vibration to some degree. And if there's a resonance there, then they may be using, you know, some of the portals that some of the darker or more challenging energies, more fear-based energies would be using. Just a thought.
What else do we want to talk about tonight? That was some pretty heavy-duty stuff to lay on everybody, but it needs to be said, needs to be thought about and talked about, because there's so much stuff that is unknown and so many different things to be aware of. And I'm not pushing fear, I'm not pushing any kind of drama. We are not fear mongers and drama queens.
Nope.
But I am telling you to be aware. Keep both eyes open all the time.
Pay attention to the wind. Pay attention to the light. Pay attention to your surroundings. Don't just, don't just ramble on and not be present. That's one of our biggest faults as human beings, is not being present. We're walking along and we're thinking about work, we're thinking about the family, we're thinking about our day, we're busy with our cell phones, we're busy with...
Thinking about chaos we saw on social media that is 1,000 miles away, but it still affects us because it's a group consciousness.
Right. And, and I'm not speaking... Really, I'm including us, because we get very busy with the channel, with life, and it takes focus to be present. And I think that's something that Anku is going to want to...
There's definitely one thing about that energy, is it is extremely focused. It's matter of fact.
Yes. But I invited him to... work closely with us tonight. I feel like a lot of the information came in a combined effort, not just on Ku. I've been tapping into as much of the highest consciousness available on these matters, because they are ruining people's lives directly and indirectly. There's a fear of getting out in nature because of what might happen. There's, our babies are having to stay indoors all the time because of what might happen if they go out in the yard and they're not supervised, or even if they are. We have so many things that are trying to bind us right now.
But fear breeds fear, and you've got to step out of that and step into an awareness mode. Once you start,
as a first step,
once you start looking with an open set of eyes and an open mind, you start realizing things for what they are or what they potentially could be.
Yes, absolutely. But we thank you for your time, and we both fell under the conviction to approach the subject. Hopefully it helps someone or someone's, and
even if it's just only one.
What a life changer.
That whole ripple effect.
Yeah. And don't be afraid, like I said, don't be afraid to claim your authority, claim your space, claim who you are. Because who you are is all that matters in the middle of it.
You hear the whippoorwills?
Yeah, I love them. Good juju. Well, that's all I have on that one tonight. That's as much as we're supposed to know tonight.
That's all he wants to share tonight, huh?
On that subject.
On that subject. Well, I think we've popped open the cork in the genie's bottle.
Yeah. We'll see if he's got more to say, and we can post a second one behind it, or...
Alright guys, we're going to let this fire die down, go get a refill on our coffee, and we will see you next time on the trail. Thanks for coming in. Hit the like, share, and subscribe.